Welcome to the CodeCast Podcast. Real-world insights for your daily medical coding and billing processes. And now, here's your host, Terry Fletcher.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the CodeCast Podcast. Today, my name is Terry Fletcher. So you know what the last Tuesday of the month is. That is Top 10 Tuesday. And I know we have a little bit of telehealth fatigue. I know we do. But we have to just talk about, I want to give you the top 10 things to do or think about now when it comes to telehealth. Now that the PHE is over, we're 3 weeks post PHE, and I'm still getting questions on things people are doing that we just can't do. So I just want to put it out there so that you have it, especially if you just haven't had the chance to either, maybe order and purchase my on-demand telehealth, which you really should, or listen to any of the offerings I've given for either NAMIS or AAPC, or boy, you name it. I've given it to everybody. So just make sure that you get some kind of educational offering so that you can be updated. But here's the top 10 things that you should definitely do now. Number 1, make sure that you know that audio only telephone calls are for established patients only. So you have to have an established patient relationship to use the 99441 to 99443 codes or 98966 to 98968 codes. And remember, the former codes I just mentioned that are, I should say the latter codes, are for qualified healthcare professionals that do not have E&M services in their repertoire of codes they can bill. So we're talking about clinical social workers, certain physical therapists, occupational therapists, things like that. So we just want to make sure that we know that's not for RNs, it's not for LVNs, it's not for MAs. They do not have any kind of billing power under telehealth. Number 2, make sure that if your physician is scheduling audio-only calls, that is incorrect, especially if you've got a protocol where you told the patient to come back in the office in 4 to 6 weeks, and then you've got something saying, well, we're going to give you a call, and you try to charge for it 2 weeks later and I'm air quoting, check on them. Don't do that. So you have to make sure that it is medically indicated, the patient, I'd say instigated, but initiated the phone call, and it is in place of an actual encounter. It's not just a checkup on anybody, and it's not to be abused. Remember, we're having all kinds of abuse on that. Number 3, make sure that you have either looked at, you're considering, you know what you're going to do, because as of August 9th, the Office of Civil Rights, they gave a 90-day extension from the post-PHE saying that you have to have a HIPAA Compliant platform to do telehealth. So you can't use Skype and FaceTime after August 9th. So you have to make sure that you've got something that is HIPAA compliant, and also don't make assumptions. So if you're thinking you use Zoom, which somebody told me today, it would have to be Zoom for healthcare. So because you have to pay for that platform, it can't be something that's free and you want to check. I know Doxy has things, that's a phone one. They're obviously Microsoft Teams, NextGen, there's all kinds of different platforms for telehealth that are HIPAA compliant. You're going to need to find one. Number 4, make sure, and this is one, oh my goodness, this is one I saw today. Somebody said that we billed a 992 through the 95 modifier because the patient wanted to get a dog for loneliness. That is not a reason. They just wanted something filled out on paperwork. That's not a reason for a telehealth visit. So if you're treating that patient's behavioral health or mental health issue and that comes up within that conversation, then that's something. But if that is just something where, and you should have read the note, it just said patient calling to get a note signed so they can get a pet because they wanted what their apartment was saying was waived, where they had a no pet clause. So that is not a reason for a telehealth visit. It's not medically necessary. It has no value at all as far as telehealth. So please don't do that. And the reason I found out about it is because the payer found out about it. And not only do they want the money back on that visit, but now they're opening them up for an audit. So be cautioned about that. What you can do, so I'm going to give you some positives too. Make sure that if you are going to bill a telehealth visit that you actually update your consents. Right now I'm still seeing everybody using what we used during PHE, which said we use it to stop or slow the spread of COVID. Well, we're not doing that anymore. Remember, the public health emergency is over. We know that whether you have a vaccine or not, or whether you have immunity or not, nothing will stop or slow the spread. So at this point, it's basically just to mitigate possibly the response to it, but that's really not why we're doing telehealth anymore, is it? No, we're doing telehealth now because it's convenient. You probably don't want to put that in the patient's chart, but if you're doing any audio only, you have to say why they were not available for an audio and video visit. So that's not just Medicare, it's Medicaid, and it's a lot of commercial plans. Number 6, make sure that you're checking to see if you have to use the payer commercial plan, their panel. So a lot of payers, because of the Obamacare Act and the Affordable Care Act, they have to offer telehealth, but they don't have to offer it for your provider. So some patients are getting these surprise bills, and we know we're not allowed to do that under the No Surprise Act, and they're thinking that they still have telehealth coverage when technically they do, but not with their own provider. They have to use a panel physician that is regulated by the actual commercial plan. So take a look at that and make sure that that's something that they're allowed to, that they can still have your office provide that. Annual well visits, can those be done over telehealth? Yes, they can. So make sure that you have some kind of policy or some kind of workflow in your office, knowing that the annual well visit with Medicare, that can be done through virtual means, as long as you have a supervising physician that is overseeing what that patient or what that provider is doing with that service. So it's actually a great way to do it. Also in telehealth, make sure that if you are seeing a patient that it couldn't possibly be an appropriate visit. This is a big thing. So if it's a patient that's requesting to come in, or if it's a patient that has something that should be seen, maybe a neurological deficit or a palpated mass or something that really can't be done over a virtual means, a virtual encounter, then you're going to want to also make sure that you get them in for a in-person visit, because remember, you can't discourage them from in-person. You can always, only as an extension, have telehealth available. Number 8, update your consents. So consent forms are completely outdated right now. You were supposed to update them once a year. I know a lot of people got complacent about that and forgot to do that. So we always want to make sure that we have that covered and that those are being updated, because they're good for a year and you can do it at the time of that visit, but it doesn't mean that you should let that go. The last thing I'm going to say in number 10 on behavioral health, remember behavioral health services, and remember there's a list still that came out on the 9th of May on what's still covered under telehealth. And when it comes to behavioral health, it's not the E&M services, it's the behavioral health counseling services that they're allowing under telehealth. So you have to stay in your lane with your services. And I'll actually give you a bonus one as well. I had a question today come from a practice saying that, well, we just listened to your webinar on telehealth, and we just found out that we're doing some visits over Zoom, and we're doing it for only with our nutritionist, and it's just for GI diagnoses. And I'm like, well, unless it's for diabetes management, or if it's nutritional, therapy codes, or if it's for chronic kidney disease, then that's not covered. And they're just like, what about obesity? I go, as it relates to a diabetic patient. So if that's not what it is, then it's not a covered service. You might have some commercial plans that may pay for a minimal visit, but most of them will not. They really follow Medicare on that. So you don't want to bill anything. Luckily, that they said, well, we're doing it, but we haven't billed it out yet. We want to in the future. And that would be incorrect, because those are tied to specific diagnosed services. So that's your kind of your telehealth, top 10 list of things you want to be mindful of. But just make sure you're not billing anything out just to go check on a patient. It's just wrong. We didn't do it before the pandemic, and we shouldn't do it after. So it's always good to err on the side of caution and making sure that you are specific in that this has to be a replacement for an encounter, and just doing it for convenient services when the patient really should be seen. I mean, think about those patients who haven't been seen in 3 years. You might have patients who just haven't bothered to come in. You probably should make it a best practice in your office to get them in again, to see them in person before you offer another telehealth visit, especially patients that you're dispensing meds. So Initially, you still have to have that visit. It's that 6-month visit to refill that has been delayed. And so you always want to know what your rules say, know what Medicare and the third parties are saying, but be very cautious about how you're using telehealth now, because we don't want you to get in trouble by using it just for convenience and it being somebody who overutilizes it. So provider enrollment forms are important, because at the end of 2023, you're going to have to add your location. And I mentioned that in a couple of episodes previously. So we always want to keep that in mind and keep that fresh in your mind too. So my personal tidbit today, I'm actually going to do a public service announcement, only because I think this is important. I, recently saw my physician. Just, as soon as you hit a certain age, they're like, and I'm not saying I'm old, but I did hit the 50. So I just want to make sure that we have, just some good habits, and we all want to do that. So you want to focus on things to avoid inflammation. We're heading into the summer months, and it's important to always try to take care of yourself. So you want to focus on whole unprocessed foods and limit the fried and high fat foods if you can. You know that. So here's something, it's called Eat This, Not That. So whole grain bread, cereals, and pastas that are whole grain. So eat this, not that. Refined processed carbohydrates such as white bread and pastries. Eat this, almonds, hazelnuts, walnuts, vegetables, and hummus with hummus or bean dip. And then not that, processed snacks such as chips. Oh man, I'm losing my chips. I love my chips and salsa. If you have to cheat, that would be a great way to cheat. Fruit, make sure eat this, fresh fruits and vegetables. I'm not a fruit person, so this will be tough. At least 3 times a day as part of a meal is snack plan. You wonder where I got this from? Yeah, I got this from the Heart Association. Not that, soda and other sweetened beverages. That's not hard for me because I drink unsweetened iced tea. And then eat this, poultry, beans, or grilled fish, and not that, red meat and burgers or steaks. That should be just moderation. Just be very careful. Eat this, fish such as salmon, tuna, and mackerel. See, mackerel to me is cat food. I don't know if I could do that. And then not that, processed meats, deli meats, hot dogs. Wow, we just got off of a Memorial Day weekend. I guess we won't be doing that for a while. And then eat this, olive oil, not that, margarine or shortening or lard. And then eat this, the last one, low-fat dairy products, including cheese and yogurt, and eggs in moderation. And then not that, high-fat dairy products, whole milk, hollandaise sauce. They had to tell us we can't have hollandaise sauce or French fries, really? Anyway, hopefully you don't mind my public service announcement. It's really for me to say it out loud, but join me in the fact that at least we'll try to lower some things in moderation, try to be a little healthier. We just had a holiday, and at least let's try to do it for June, since we know that 4th of July comes and we might be back to that hot dog. So everyone, thanks for being with me today, and make it a great day, a great rest of your week, and thanks for listening to the CodeCast Podcast.
For more information on medical coding, billing, auditing, and compliance, including how to hire Terry, follow Terry on Twitter @TerryCoder1 or visit her website at www.terryfletcher.net. Podcast producer Joe Kuzma. Music producer Dassassin Music.